There are a lot of things I'd like to see done better in this country. On that list, education is right up near the top. But is it right to break the law to improve education? That's the question I asked myself when I read the text of H.R. 5349, the crucial Communism Teaching Act. You see, while teaching the truth about communism's history is important, should this bill pass Congress and be signed, it cannot be the supreme law of the land because it was not made pursuant to the Constitution of the United States. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
Lovely neighbors and have a few good friends. Every day we're everyday Americans. Oh, every day we're everyday Americans.
Hello there, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study, where we read and study the Constitution. Teach your generation be free. I'm glad you could join me today. You know, education is a big thing. I want better education. I want better civics education. I'd love to see better education about our history and the actual facts of what happened. But if that's going to be done, it has to be legal. I'll talk more about the website and other things at the end of the episode. But for now, let's talk about the crucial Communism Teaching Act. Okay, let's back up a little bit. On December 6, 2024, the House passed H.R. 5349 with 327 votes for and 62 votes against. As of the recording of this episode, it has been received by the Senate and referred to the Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. Let's start by looking at the purpose of this legislation. The purposes of this act are the following: to help families, civic institutions, local communities, local education agencies, high schools, and state educational agencies to prepare high school students to be civically responsible and knowledgeable adults. First, let's notice that the entities Congress wants to help are primarily local. Yes, the list includes state education agencies, but families and civic institutions, along with high schools, are local entities. Why this is important will become evident a little later. Now, the goal of preparing our young people to be civilly responsible and knowledgeable adults is laudable, but that does not justify this legislation. Neither does the Constitution vest in Congress the power to determine what needs to be taught in our high schools, as this legislation claims to do. To ensure that high school students in the United States learn that communism has led to the deaths of over 100 million victims worldwide, understand the dangers of communism and similar political ideologies, and understand that 1.5 billion people still suffer under communism. Learning the truth about history is very important. As Santayana said, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. That does not mean the federal government is the right entity to teach history. Now, since the Constitution does not vest in the United States the power to regulate education, Congress doesn't have the legal authority to make such law. Now, per the law, Congress must include a constitutional authority statement in all legislation. In other words, before a member of Congress, either House or Senate, introduces legislation, they must show that Congress actually has the authority to make such a law. In the constitutional authority statement for H.R. 5349, Representative Salazar wrote, Congress has the power to enact this legislation pursuant to the following. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18. Does Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 vest in Congress the power to regulate education? The Constitution vests several powers in the Congress of the United States. Many of those powers are listed in Article 1, Section 8. The last of the powers delegated to the Congress in Article 1, Section 8 comes in Clause 18, the Necessary and Proper Clause, which states that Congress has the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers, and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or any department or officer thereof. So for Congress to be able to make a law, it must be both necessary and proper for putting into execution a power vested by the Constitution in the government of the United States or in one of its departments or officers. However, regulating education is not a power vested in any part of the government of the United States. It is therefore neither necessary nor proper for Congress to make a law to regulate education. In other words, not only is Ms. Salazar's constitutional authority statement foolish, it also shows the ignorance of the Constitution not only for Ms. Salazar, but for the 33 other members of the House of Representatives who co-sponsored the legislation. Now, since this legislation is unconstitutional, to claim it has the power to create curricula is a lie. Rather, this legislation, should it be passed and signed, would allege the federal government take the following actions in violation of the law and the oath of office for every member of any government official who implemented it. The independent entity created under Section 905B1B of the Friendship Act, part of 40 U.S.C. Section 8903, under 107 Statute 2331, also known as the Victims of Communism Memorial shall... Okay, time out. This line confused me a bit. You see, Title 40 of the United States Code, Section 8903, is entitled Congressional Authorization of Commemorative Works. That's right. Congress wants to ask an organization created for the purpose of creating monuments and other commemorative works to tell schools how to teach. Specifically, Congress wants your children taught about communism by a group whose sole purpose is the National Captive Nations Committee, Inc. is authorized to construct, maintain, and operate in the District of Columbia an appropriate international memorial to honor victims of communism. The National Captive Nations Committee, Inc. is encouraged to create an independent entity for the purpose of constructing, maintaining, and operating the memorial. Once created, this entity is encouraged and authorized to maximum extent practicable to include as active participants organizations representing all groups that have suffered under communism. First of all, this National Captive Nations, Inc., apparently a federal corporation, is only authorized to construct, maintain, and operate a memorial within the District of Columbia. This is where Congress has general legislative power. Now, what logical reason does Ms. Salazar and Congress have to believe them capable of developing a civic education curriculum as stated in the law? Their job is to develop a civic education curriculum for high school students that includes a comparative discussion of certain political ideologies, including communism and totalitarianism, that conflict with the principles of freedom and democracy that are essential to the founding of the United States, is accurate, relevant, and accessible so as to promote the understanding of such political ideologies, and is compatible with a variety of courses, including social studies, government, history, and economic classes. I've developed curricula. It's not an easy task. Even with my extensive knowledge of the topics at hand, turning that into something pedagogically, the art, science, or profession of teaching, was quite difficult. Are we to expect a group of people trained in building and operating monuments are up to the task? Where's the vetting of the facts and data that would be included in such curriculum? Where's the peer review? Where is anything resembling the art, science, or profession of teaching in this legislation? They're also to develop oral history resources that may be used alongside the curriculum described in paragraph 1, and that include personal stories titled Portraits and Patriotism from diverse individuals who demonstrate civic-minded qualities, are victims of the political ideologies described in paragraph 1A, and are able to compare the political ideologies described in paragraph 1A with the political ideology of the United States. Again, developing an oral history resource is not a simple task. While such an oral history is quite powerful as an educational tool, it is a difficult task, since said history must also be vetted if it is to be a real educational value. They're also to engage with state and local education leaders to assist high schools in using the curriculum described in paragraph 1 and the resources described in paragraph 2. Now, after all the work is done, Congress wants this group of monument builders to help high schools to use their curriculum. I wonder, will any Department of Education dollars be used to entice and influence these schools to adopt this questionable curriculum? Yes, I believe not only that education is important, but learning about history should be part of that education. I think that when confronted by the evils committed by current and past communist regimes, most people would be horrified and avoid adopting such political ideas. However, is it within the powers of the United States to make that determination? No. Has the government of the United States been vested with the power to regulate or fund education? No. Would this legislation, should it be passed and signed by a president, be valid? Absolutely not. As the Supreme Court pointed out in the case Norton v. Shelby County, an unconstitutional act is not a law. It confers no rights and imposes no duties. It affords no protections. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. Since Congress seems to value a civic education so much, perhaps it should start with its own. After all, the constitutional authority statement for this legislation shows an absolute ignorance of the necessary and proper clause of the United States Constitution. Perhaps people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. After all, if the members of Congress who not only write our legislation, but took an oath or affirmation to support the Constitution of the United States, are so ignorant of not just the document as a whole, but the language vesting them with power, how can we take any civic education they create seriously? Let's not forget that the National Captive Nations Committee, Inc., that Congress wants to develop this questionable curriculum, will have costs that need to be paid. Can we expect Congress to embezzle more money from the American people to pay those expenses? Again, I wholeheartedly support the inclusion of civics in our educational system. I simply wish Congress would educate itself about its legal powers beforehand. How can members of Congress claim to pull the speck out of the eye of our education system while a gigantic beam is wedged in theirs? You know, it's funny, I saw posts in social media recently about how, Trump is coming and everything will be great. The Republicans will be in charge and the Constitution will be followed again. This was a Republican member of the House that wrote this dumpster fire, that had the brilliant idea that, well, the Constitution says we can make laws necessary and proper and just stop there. I don't know Ms. Salazar. What I know is she's constitutionally illiterate. And this legislation is just another example. Again, I want to see civics taught. I would love to see the truth about communism taught in our schools. That's not the role of Congress. That's the role of you and me. The parents, the taxpayers, the local people who need to engage with our school districts and make sure that they are teaching what we think they should be teaching. And if not, hire better people. Now, if you want to keep up to date on other unconstitutional laws or just crazy court cases, well, by all means, sign up for a mailing list at the website, constitutionstudy.com. Go down a little bit, you'll see a mailing list button. You can also ask a question or otherwise engage with what we're doing here. Maybe stop by the shop and buy a book or a mug, or maybe just browse the different sections and feeds that we have there. I do all of this to bring you information to help, well, educate you and the rising generation, to teach us all to be free. Another way you can learn is this course I found called The Miracle of America. It's a grade 12 lesson course about our history from the original landings from the Mayflower in Jamestown to the drafting of the Constitution. It helps explain why the Constitution is the way it is and why we see certain things in it. Now, I made a deal with the publishers to get you a lesson absolutely free. Just go to constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide. That's the numerals 1776 study guide. You'll be taken to a custom landing page just for Constitution Study listeners. You can check out the course, you can read some details. Best of all, you can enroll for your free lesson on God's natural law. If you like the course, you want to take the whole thing, it's just $17.76, which I think is a pretty fair deal. So again, to find out more, go to constitutionstudy.com/1776 study guide to learn more about the course and to sign up for your free lesson. And if you're looking for other ways to support freedom and liberty of this country, hey, Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. It's the only one we've got. You get great 4G and 5G coverage all across the country on the same networks and towers that the major carriers use. But when you pay your bill, they don't take that money to support organizations that are attacking our rights. They support organizations like NRA, Folds of Honor, First Liberty, organizations that are protecting our rights, or at least working to do so. Wouldn't it be nice to use your cell phone to defend your rights rather than use that money to attack them? Again, if you go to the website, patriotmobile.com/constitution, you can find a plan that works for you, but be sure to use the code Constitution at checkout to get free activation. Again, that website is patriotmobile.com/constitution, and don't forget the promo code Constitution at checkout to get free activation. Whatever you do, I hope you'll share this episode. I hope you share all the episodes that we do here. I hope you'll engage and ask questions. I hope you'll be involved. I hope you'll check out all the work that we're doing. And I hope you come back here next time and, hey, maybe bring a friend or two to the Constitution study.